We asked you, does anyone care about new Marvel and DC characters? And you guys overwhelmingly said yes. The problem is that is not reflected in the sales of books that star new characters. So the question becomes, if there are people who care, you, the listener, what can Marvel and DC do? What must they do to get you to put your money where your mouth is and purchase the books where these new characters are coming from?
For me, for me to get to pick up a number one, and the most recent thing that I'm thinking about is Trinity. I think we're on issue 2 or 3 at the moment. Um, I didn't. I thought I would. I thought I'd care, and I ultimately didn't pick it up. And the reason was, while there was some familiarity in another title, it was bogged down by uh, the character launch was bogged down by that title. She had a presence in the Wonder Woman run. Uh, it it was a story being told, and there was meant to be some consequence come out of that. And I think that's what I feel like you need for me to pick up is consequence coming out of the integrated universe that that character is now entering. It lives in a world where other characters exist, and so for that character to matter in that world, if they take some action, that must affect some other player in that world. And it didn't have that. It very much felt like dictation and launch, and here's what you're meant to now go into. For some people that might work, but for me, I felt like I needed more hand holding to be able to do that. So I think that's the first thing Marvel and or DC need to do is a bit of hand holding to build up the character with meaningful consequence.
There's a it's a funny thing that you bring up Trinity. I think industry plant when it comes to Trinity. But like when I think about new characters and the ones that really hit for me, I think of things like Young Avengers. I think of things like the Initiative, and one of those is more long lasting than the other. And the trick with those were I feel like they require the world, and I guess I'm speaking specifically for Marvel at this point, but they require the world to have some form of ongoing story that you could introduce these other characters in other books and then launch them somewhere else. With the Initiative comic that launches out of Civil War and introduces a whole bunch of new characters. Problem is with those characters, I don't think they really hit anywhere. Young Avengers is, I believe, launches out of Disassembled in a way, and those characters actually did hit. And I think that it requires showing them off in something else first, and then deciding, all right, we're gonna stick with these characters and really put some work and effort behind it. Marvel's kind of doing it right now with new champions, although as I'm saying this, I think it just got canceled.
I think I'm gonna go ahead and cancel that.
Okay.
Sure did.
Yeah, but that got at least what
8 issues.
oh, okay, much less than I remember. And that spun out of a variant cover initiative. But I don't know. I guess I would just like them to see them put some muscle behind new characters and actually put the work into putting out a longer lasting story than 8 issues. 12 issues minimum, I think you need to have to solidify a character in a space.
I think that when I think about this, I think about WWE and professional wrestling. And I'm going to be brief about this comparison. In the WWE, when they want to make someone a star, they put thought, effort, and TV time into that person. And the more that the audience is exposed to that person, and the more that that person does things that are interesting, and the more that they rub shoulders with people that the audience otherwise is interested in, the more that you care about that character. And to me, that's pretty simple. Maybe it's because I've been watching wrestling all my life. But if you create a new character like Punchline, for example, and she rubs shoulders with the Joker, You've now put her alongside the most popular villain that you have access to. That's going to do something. And you just keep doing that.
And Punchline's a good example because for all intents and purposes, it did work. And they just stopped. And I don't know why. That feels like such a weird like fumble, to be honest. She was huge.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense or add up. But you take a character like X-23, and again, she has some built-in, Wolverine DNA, quite literally. But you take her and you just put her in the mix. You make her compelling by putting her in the mix. The X-Men is a tremendous example because you have the literal, Titans, the Mount Rushmore X-Men, the ones that everyone knows, and it's very easy in any of those books to say, all right, well, also next to them is this character that you don't know. And how many times have they pulled that trick? That's how they got Kitty Pryde over. That's how they've gotten so many mutants. That's how they got X-23 over.
Could you argue though the X-Men way is also how a lot of characters flop and then they get lost to obscurity as soon as that run is done? Where's Armor? Armor was Joss Whedon's version of that character. There's so many young X-Men teams, literally young X-Men, Generation X. In a way, Sync was Hickman's for the brief period he was doing, or no, sorry, Jerry Duggan's for Duggan's run on the character. Yes, I think they do hit with stuff like Kitty and stuff like, trying to think of another character that worked with. I guess Quentin Quire is working right now, and Magic, but they do it so much with X-Men that it's maybe a 50-50 split.
But
Go ahead, Marco.
they're trying it now in Uncanny, in Exceptional.
They
And I
got
feel
3
like,
books to do it with. That's why.
yeah. And but Uncanny feels like anytime we've poked in on that book, I haven't been able to connect a bit more with Exceptional. But I think there's also characters I care about in that one more. I care more about Kitty, care more about Emma Frost. So to see them even get exposure with characters like Gambit, with Rogue, uh, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, whatever, hasn't it hasn't produced the results for me yet. So I don't know if that's the right answer. Like, I also don't think that they've been given a lot of free reign. I think that's the thing that they need to give the kids more of, is let them make more mistakes in the world, not guided by the results or the pushes of the older guard that is driving those forces. Like Gray Malkin wasn't necessarily because somebody, one of the new team members did something wrong. That was carryover. I think they need to step on, for lack of a better term, step on a landmine and help deal and resolve it themselves to help earn the trust from a reader like myself to be like, oh, this character's cool. I remember their name. I still call her Horse Girl, dude.
The thing is that the examples you just gave, Marco, that they're just throwing, 4 or 5 characters at you. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about focusing on, especially if you're going to talk about in an individual book, maybe 1 or 2 characters that you're trying to get over. The Sync example is a lot closer to what I'm talking about, but that's because it didn't start with Duggan, it started with Hickman. Hickman was the one that put him in that fucking in the hyper fast evolving city with Laura Kinney. That's where so many of us fell in love with that character. And it isn't a question of whether or not those efforts were successful. They were successful because a lot of people have been asking about Sync in the aftermath of Krakoa. The problem is that Marvel, on an editorial level, doesn't have him as a priority. That just is what it is. Punchline hit after they introduced her, and DC just didn't have her as a priority, so she fucked off. But if you ask whether or not people like Punchline, you really only need to look at the fact that every other comment on the other video we did in this vein was about Punchline.
And that makes
It
you
works if you work it.
so do you think the sidekick route works? You know what I mean? Like I'm thinking almost like the Wonder Twins route. Because Punchline worked because she was hot and it was a cool villain. I think the villains are actually more likely to hit than the superheroes. But I think of like um when you throw like Airwave onto the Justice League, you know, like it's a young, new-ish character, but he's not really hitting right now. Or if you throw Robbie Reyes when he was on Jason Aaron's Avengers, like that was the odd one out, and he was the young POV character, essentially their Kitty Pryde in a way. Um, Sometimes that sniper shot focusing on one hits, and sometimes it doesn't. I don't think it worked for Robbie Reyes at all. He has not been seen since that book ended.
But you
Um,
can't judge it by that because that's not Robbie Reyes' choice, nor is it the audience's choice. It's editorial's choice. That's a punchline scenario.
so you're thinking you're seeing the line between organic versus editorial.
I'm saying that if a character is intriguing to the audience, and I know that Robbie Reyes got over because people love Robbie Reyes. I think he's the next Ghost Rider. Like he's the one that people want to see. So why doesn't Marvel put effort in him? I don't know. Ask Vince McMahon why he didn't put effort into Daniel Bryan. The audience is telling you one thing, and editorial in this case is choosing to go another way, and that's their choice. But that doesn't mean it's a good one. But I wouldn't say that that is a reflection upon whether or not the character hit. Sales would be.
I do think it's hard for new characters to hit at the big two, specifically Marvel here, because I think they are so driven by what's coming next that they already know what's coming next. It doesn't really give room for an organic, like, oh, this character is really popular, let's see more of that character, because they already know who their next character and IP they're going to focus on for the next 5-10 years is going to be, and they probably have plans for those characters in books. Um,
And I think to that, like if you add in a new character, you're taking a risk on whether or not the character that is going to be a focus will have enough of an impact to elevate the other character. Like if you make them the sidekick, I don't know that that always works. Just because I feel like you can kind of get them pigeonholed into like a space, and you build an expectation with that. But if you have a focus for a specific character and you try to raise them and run them along, I think it's hard to really then separate them. Then they become almost like a duo, and then once the next title kind of goes off, it's hard to have them stand alone. Like I'm thinking of Spider Boy right now, which like seems to have hit an audience,
his book got canceled.
got canceled for the sales of it, but did it have enough of an impact that it left a mark on people where somebody is now saying, "Hey, actually, that's my favorite Spider character." I think that's a marker for whether or not a character might land over the sales, because there are things as like cult followings for movies and for characters and for books, and so I think there's something to be said there. But it's hard. That's hard to measure.
Well, let me ask you this: is Ironheart over? Is she popular?
No.
Well, you almost got to think about it in two ways, though. Like in the comics, no, not really. She had one definitive writer, or two, and currently does not have a book and is guest starring in the next issue of Exceptional X-Men. But those people that don't read comics and watch movies and the TV shows might think she's pretty popular. She got her own show. So it's weird.
I don't think that Ironheart is popular. And I think that she got a show because they wanted to give her a show. And that is proof to me that Marvel or DC, quite frankly, can put their effort behind whatever they feel like putting their effort behind. Now imagine if you take Ironheart, the same character you intend to give a show to, and put Hickman on her, or put, Gail Simone on her, put a creative team on her that's going to really push her forward. And then when you've got an event coming, she doesn't need to be the main character, but she could have a role that would matter, that could, build some groundswell of support for her. That's what is consistently lacking on Marvel's part. And the most recent time I can think of where they really tried to do that, and it didn't work, but it's not the fault of the character, is Civil War 2. They tried to do that with Miles Morales.
Yeah, I was just about
They
to mention that.
they put him in the front and center of that whole thing. And it didn't work simply because that event in a lot of people's minds sucked. But it was the right idea. They did the right thing.
And it sucks that they need to the characters they're focusing on right now are characters we already know and love. Fantastic Four, the Doctor Doom. That's where their focus is in the comics because guess what? Synergy. And until they decide they want to put Nico Minoru in a movie, and then we can get a Nico Minoru comic that we've been craving for decades at this point, then maybe they will. But I feel like Marvel's just so inclined with like they have their team of next ups they're gonna do. Fans be damned. You'll like it when it comes out. Maybe we'll give it 10 issues.
I don't think DC's any different.
My mind doesn't focus so much on DC when it comes to new characters. I think that because there's not a lot less new characters at DC and a lot more bringing more focus onto pre-existing lesser known characters.
Yeah.
Like New God's getting a hard push at DC right now. Whereas they haven't really had a book, in the spotlight for years now. Sure, maybe Mr. Miracle was probably closest. But I think DC's solidifying their already established characters, so that's where my mind's going for them. I don't even think they're making new characters at this point. Maybe an occasional New God here and there. And maybe Batman gets a new youth that he focuses on that doesn't get a Robin title. Signal High. But yeah, I just don't even think they're worried about that right now.
Just going back to the question at hand, what gets you to pick up not a number 1, a number 2 of a brand new character? Debuted already, read the first issue. What is going to get you to pick up the second?
A good first issue.
One being good.
Were you expecting a different answer to that?
Well, I guess
I'm not gonna pick it up if it's bad.
I guess the expectation isn't necessarily like to the point of yes, you need to push the character, right? But there's been a number of titles that we've reviewed. It has a number 1 of a pre-existing character, right? And it could be good enough, right? But it won't push us to the number 2 to purchase. Like, how do you get it to be it's good enough and there's enough presence by either Marvel or DC to convince you to pick up that second issue, that third issue, to continue down?
Well, I think the answer to that is the same whether or not it's based on a new character or if it's Justice League number 1. It's creative team and the issue 1 is really what drives me to it. It could be a new character, it could not be a new character. It's gonna be the same for me.
I think, I definitely think there is a magic to what makes something good. And that is in and of itself subjective. But the answer is really not any more complicated than that. If you've got something that's good, generally speaking, people will check it out. Especially if you have the benefit of it being a new number 1. Because is the biggest chance people will have to get their eyes on it. So to me, a new number 1 that's hot, a character that's unique in the publishing line. I mean, you don't need. We've got like 57 Spider people right now. You don't need that, and there is such a thing as character burnout. Like I have no more room in me for any more duplicates of pretty much anybody. I don't give a fuck. I'm writing with the first version, and that's about it. So if you're talking, huh?
I was gonna say New Champions is not for you then.
That's why I don't buy it. If you're talking to me on that level, I'm a pass almost every time. But if you're creating a unique new character, all you need is a great creative team with a solid concept, and I think people will show up.
Or make them a character in Marvel Rivals. Jeff outsold so many other comics this month with his new #1. Maybe that's the key. That's some outside interference, maybe.
Sometimes it could be that, and that probably has more to do with the game's publisher, who they choose to represent, and stuff like that. But it's certainly, I mean, that is a success. There's no doubt that that's a success story. So, ultimately, put out good books. Put out good books. Put these characters next to characters that we care about. Creative teams that we know, generally speaking, deliver the goods, and then leave it up to us. But the most important thing, in my eyes, beyond all that, is follow through. I fucking love Sync, and I did not give a damn about him before Krakoa. Where is he at? You put all that effort in, all that publishing effort. Where is he at?
He was in NYX, which also got canceled.
And his role in that was dog shit.
He didn't show up till halfway through.
Yeah, I want him to have a role. I want it to be something meaningful. That's what you've got to do. You've got to do it. One of the top 10 moments for me from Krakoa is that motherfucker seeing the version of Laura Kinney that didn't know who he was because she had been it was the new version. She didn't know who he was.
Got resurrected.
Honestly, they should have just launched a new #1 with him. They want to do all these solo titles. Pull the trigger on a solo character that maybe didn't have one before.
Yeah, that should have been the #1 is Sync and Laura Kinney in that relationship.
To me, a sync solo series is on a road to cancellation faster than if you had a comic written by me. But putting him on the core Avenger or X-Men team, yes. Yeah. That's something you do.
You would need to know what your core X-Men team is first, I think, on the X-Men line to do that. But yeah.
Take your pick. I don't even care.
Yeah.
Jed McKay, Gail Simone, Viewing, whoever. Sync. That's all it takes. Who are the new comic book characters that you are actually interested in and checking for? And when I say new for the purposes of this, I'm talking about created within the last 10 years. If you can meet that challenge, I salute you, because 10 years in comics, it feels like nothing. That's a drop in the bucket.
Blink.
Miss Marvel was created longer ago than that. So was Miles Morales.
Damn.
They're not new anymore. We got kids out here today that have favorite kinds of music, have survived presidencies older than those characters. Make new characters, make them great. We'll see you in the next one. Whoa, you guys are taking that way different. Just make the new ones good. Make them good.
Make them great for the first time.
Yes, yeah, because they're new.
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.